All right, this is a first on this podcast. I usually have one guest, and today I have six, and I don't know which one is better than the other. And there's such a blend of beautiful personalities. I'm thrilled to be able to have the team from Austin Alliance Group with me today. And there is a reason why there are so many people here because, you know, changing workplaces and making them more human, just having them here and having them be able to share their voices with you is going to give you such hope. Remove the golden handcuffs and really do what you want to do in your career moving forward from right now. So I want to introduce you to she is, oh gosh, she's such an amazing visionary. And I know that she can introduce the team way better than I can. So Lisa, would you give us a little insight into this amazing team and the work that you're doing?
Well, thank you, Paula, for having us on. The six of us have said many times in our conversations, we call it the huddle every week. Shit, we should have had that recorded. So we have these nuggets of how can we help the organizations be more human with each other. And so that's what we do for a living now is helping organizations be more human, one person at a time, one team at a time. And so, yes, we wanted to come together and just if you could just record one of our conversations that we talk about and have nuggets that we can help people who are listening to your podcast show up more human in the workplace and less about, some trauma that many of us have had in the workplace.
I just want people to understand that they really do have conversations that have nothing to do with clients that are about how can we do this better? How can we be better to each other? They are living and breathing their values and their mission, which if people go to your website and they immediately see, to me, I have a bit of trauma from my corporate days of like HR was for the company, HR was not for the employee. And that was sort of the mantra that went around. So if people are going to your website and they're thinking, yeah, okay, whatever, that they're just singing some song and it's not real. This is very performative. How are you changing the mentality of HR for people who really have been traumatized by the lack of support that they feel like they're supposed to be getting in their company from that department?
Well, I see HR as they are protecting and managing one of the most important assets of the company, which is their people. Even if the product, the asset of a company is something material or you're selling something, HR, their whole job is the people, is to make sure that their people are showing up the best every single day. And that also means that these people aren't products. They're not something, not robots you can just kind of like click a couple buttons and manage. Their whole people. Yeah, exactly. They're whole people. And when they leave the workplace or shut their laptops, they have full lives outside of that. And I think it's HR's job to recognize, acknowledge, honor that, and know that the way that you're going to get the best work out of somebody, the way that you're going to have them be able to show up their best at work is by acknowledging that they are a full, holistic human first. And so hopefully that's the new way we're going with HR.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you said the new way. Sitting here with the seven of us, I am the oldest person here, and I started working in the late 70s. When it was show up, you better not say anything about your home life. You do whatever your boss tells you to do, and nothing. And in your mind, you're like, nothing more, because I might be, slapped on the hand, and nothing less. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. You keep your mouth shut and your head down.
HR is the principal's office.
Yeah, and say that again.
Call the principal's office.
Oh yeah, we are called the principal's office.
That's what it was.
And that's how I grew up, but that doesn't work anymore for many, many different reasons. And I think, Kim, you were talking about that earlier this morning. There's some data around what's changed in the last 50 years, that the top-down carrot and stick approach to employee relations just doesn't work anymore.
right? We were talking about generations and how, so many generations, there are learned behaviors that are still present today and what the workforce is. And what was different 50, 60, 70 years ago is when you started a career, you stayed in that career. You didn't have as many options. There wasn't remote and virtual and all of these different organizations, maybe in your small hometown or whatever it may be. And so you were in that job and you just had to make it work. And managers at that time, or leaders, led and managed differently because there was no risk of losing that employee. And if you wanted something out of them, you just drilled in harder. Did it really work? I don't know. But it's interesting now to see that we have options in the workforce.
Mhm.
And in order to do in order to manage your people and lead your people, there are things that we have to break, some learned behaviors that we have to change, on how we manage and develop others and mentor them.
So how do you dismantle those?
Well,
Especially
let's be
when you're
honest,
talking about trauma, right? We're
it-
talking about people who are parents who are basically telling their kids, well, you have to show up professionally to work and this is what you do, even though times are changing. So how are you guys doing that?
Well, and let's be honest, what we just described does still exist. It's not
It
like
does.
it's only in the past and every workplace is no longer
Mhm.
operating like that. I see everybody shaking their head because we see that too. And so absolutely that leads into like the idea of trauma that we talked about recently in the workplace and toxicity. It still exists. And I think that's kind of at the core for us about when we talk about inspiring organizations to be more human. I think each one of us have our own experiences with that toxicity and that trauma that like drive our passion for changing it for every person and workplace that we come in contact with. And one of our core values is abundance mindset. And we really truly live that out because we also don't think that we alone as our team are going to fix every single organization, every single workplace. We know that there's work to do. And the more we partner with others, the more we allow for other professionals like yourself, Paula. I mean, that's how we came in contact with you. And yeah, the more people that we can like excite behind that idea of being more human, we're fulfilled. Like that does it for us because we've now planted that seed or modeled that way and go forth and change the workplace because we at our core have experienced it ourselves.
Yeah, I would definitely say there's still that leader that uses the fear tactic, right? Let's put the fear of God in our employees to get them to do what we need them to do. We're slowly realizing like those tactics really don't work. And so, for the HR services, as we go in, it's a matter of listening and observing and watching what's going on, because one tactic doesn't work for all industries. You have to approach it differently. Everyone's a little different, and you have to be able to read that and understand that, and then be able to kind of explain to a manager, hey, have you tried this? When you do this, this is what kind of happens. Like you kind of make them, you kind of open their eyes to what's going on around them, because sometimes they're just so focused on whatever they're doing that it's like Rachel said, their employees just a number. They don't have a name, they don't know their family, but it doesn't work that way very much.
And they have to want to change, right? They have to want to change. So you're not going into these organizations and saying, okay, we're magical and we're going to wave our wand and everyone's going to listen to us and everyone's going to get along and things are going to be sunshine, unicorns, and rainbows. You can want that. Right. If they don't want that for themselves, nothing changes if nothing changes.
That's one of our mottos. We can't want it more than they. Yeah, we can't want it more than they do. They have to want it, and they have to be willing to recognize it, right? Like we go into clients and we might handle one way and another way, but And when we go in, it's not just we're telling people this is what you should be doing. It's why do you do it the way you do it now? What's the reason? What's our end goal? What are we looking to do? I mean, we're looking for that improvement.
And
I
I
love
think
that.
too,
Ooh, Rachel, go ahead.
I think too, to be human, right, is to embrace all of our uniqueness and diversity. And the workforce has never been more diverse than it is now. So if you have somebody that's in a people leading role that got to where they were because they were rewarded for following the rules and the status quo of how workforces, like we've already said, are still operating in some places today, but really have in the past, a lot of their mindset is, well, it worked for me. It made me successful. I'm trying to make my people successful. So they should just do exactly what I did, without understanding that it's working for a very, very select, small group of people. Your goal truly is to have your people be successful. That requires you to have that communication, emotional intelligence skill set to look outside of your own experience. And like Tina was saying, listening, observing to see what's truly best for your people, which again are going to be the most diverse set of people that you've really ever experienced in the workforce, which is phenomenal and fantastic. It's going to make things better and better.
I wanted to go.
I always tell my clients that think of a cell phone. A cell phone evolves all the time. The minute you get a new one, there's already another one coming out.
Yeah.
You have to evolve as a manager. You have to keep taking in that knowledge, keep seeking those skill sets to get where you need to be.
Keep being curious and how and reflective and how can I improve on a daily basis, because I don't think anybody's got it right the first time or still to
So
this
managing
Curiosity
people
is a fantastic. Ooh, go ahead, Free.
just managing people is the hardest job there is. Managing people
absolutely.
Because people evolve.
hardest part.
Humans evolve. Continuously, we grow, we learn. And then as a manager or leader, you're trying to harness that. And if you're doing it the right way, you're harnessing it for good. And so that's a great analogy, Tina, of the cell phone and the manager and leader supervisors constantly evolving their tactics and their leadership and their way of bringing out the best in their people.
I've heard the word curiosity come up a bunch of times, and I'm a huge proponent for that. I think it's an amazing tool and it can be used in so many ways. I do find that people who are not ready for that evolution can find that curiosity, even when it's well intended, to be very triggering and get incredibly defensive. So going into these organizations, sort of understanding that, and I know before we hit record, we sort of talked about feedback, and feedback is really important. When you're giving that feedback to a leader, a manager, people manager, how do you soften that, or what do you say so that they understand that they were doing the best they could with what they had, going to ask you some more questions so that you can get better? What are you doing?
Well, I have one story that I'd like to I think would be really relevant right here. Some, I'll say, seasoned supervisors, when we're doing some one-to-one coaching, and they're like, why aren't these people this generation? And then I turn it to asking curious questions, their perspective. Do you have any children? Yes. When you are looking at going on vacation, they have some input. Like, do you ask them, where do you want to go? What's going on? Are they somehow involved with the decision of what the family vacation might be like? And then that leader loves to tell me stories about, and then we this and this, and how they're proud of they are teaching their children to ask curious questions, to be involved in the decision making. And then when they stop, I said, okay, well, let's think about this, quote, new generation in the workplace. How did they grow up? Their parents involved them in the decisions. What about you? When you were a child, did your parents ask you questions about, and did you have input and be able to weigh in on when you're going to family vacations? And they go, no, I was just told to do it. Let's be curious about that. And then it ends up usually they laugh and they're like, so like, it's our fault. We raise these very amazing, curious generations that are amazing in the workforce, creative, resourceful. So then that's how I can help in that one-to-one coaching, get that person to see a different point of view. So that's one of the things that I personally have in the techniques. But
I think
anyone else on the team?
I think being curious and guiding and advising clients is not just about trying to get them to get in alignment with you. It truly is about understanding their perspectives, because there's a whole lot of things, traumas and previous experiences and learned behaviors that come out in being curious as an advisor, that you then have a treasure trove of all of this valid information that you can use to help guide them to what needs to happen, whether it's managing their people a different way or even doing their own work a different way. It's not just about asking curious questions to guide them to what you think is best. It's asking curious questions so that y'all both can come to a conclusion together of what could potentially work best.
I think too, and if you kind of back it up even more, in order to establish the kind of relationship that a manager and their direct report may have, where you can have those really honest conversations and know each other's triggers, like you were talking about, Paula, starts with a foundation of trust. That foundation of trust also starts with just really getting to know each other on a personal level. I think to try to give or receive feedback without establishing trust, without truly knowing who that person is that's sitting across from you, you're going to start making a lot of assumptions. You're going to start going to what we call MSU, making shit up. And
Sounds like a really cool university.
Yeah, you really don't want to go to. It's not.
In your mind, you think it's cool.
But you have to have that trust and that knowing that when someone's asking those questions, they really truly do want to know your perspective, and they want you to be honest, even if it's difficult. And you know kind of what topics might be like too difficult to talk about, what topics are safe. But yeah, you can't do that without trust.
Trust look like though? Because I think for some people, they're coming into the workplace, they don't want to overshare. Have that problem. But they're coming into the workplace and they don't want to overshare, and then they're afraid if they're asking questions, maybe they're digging in and they're, I don't know, crossing some line. And I know that when we say trust, it can be superficial in a lot of ways. I would love to know from your perspective. I certainly have stories, but where have you seen trust sort of take on its full embodied definition?
I'm gonna pick me.
Okay, you.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm sure an example will come, but generally speaking, in the way that we operate and what we, I think just soothes out, like comes out of us in the way that we operate, is vulnerability-based trust. And that's, like ourselves being willing to admit our mistakes and our weaknesses, or recognize weaknesses, or listen to other people's opinions about something that we're a subject matter expert of. That all kind of encompasses this idea of vulnerability-based trust. And so even when we're first like working with clients, we try to be vulnerable ourselves with them as a way to, like leaders go first. So if we're leading a client or if we're leading a group through anything, we try to show up that way ourselves as quote unquote consultants, so that we create that openness that they can too. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's how we
We the box of dust.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'd
Yeah.
say we don't do it like as a tactic. It's not something that we're like, oh, this is gonna work. It's like it's
Mhm.
how we operate amongst ourselves, and it's what we've learned as we came together, and so we just kind of operate that way with that idea of vulnerability based first,
And I think
based trust first.
recognizing other strengths that are not our own.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to like being human is being authentic. And
Yes.
so if you are, to answer your question, Paula, I think, coming into a workforce, you're like, oh, I'm supposed to like fit into this mold because that's how others on the team are. I'm coming into a new job. I want this job. Great. Why do you want this job? And how is you not being your human, authentic self make you not a good fit for this job? And I
Mhm.
think that that's what a lot of, this current generation that's coming into the workforce, because they've been raised so curious, they already know. A lot of them, I think, know it, that it's like, if I can't be my authentic self, then that's not a great place for me. And I think it's really about workforces defining that it's okay to be your authentic self if you're in the right role too. I don't know if that makes sense, but it does
It
in
does.
my
And that's why right now people like hot topics out there is, oh, we're being ghosted. Like we offered a job, there came the first day and then they didn't return. Yeah, the employee, right, has the power right now. And Polly, you started with, well, HR, aren't you all about the company, right? Versus the employee. Well, that's our stance is you have to be pro people, and that is good for the company.
Yes.
If you're not pro people, you're going to see it in the bottom line. It's
Mhm.
not going to work. You're going to be frustrated. Everyone's going to be frustrated, and you're not going to achieve the collective results that you would put out there, whether you're a for-profit, nonprofit, or government. So
Mhm.
it really understanding people, and that's the hardest thing. That's why
It's
people
so
like
hard.
to manage things versus to lead people.
Mhm.
You can't make people do anything. You can only inspire them, which means you got to tell them the why, and it takes a lot of effort instead of just go do what I tell you to do and shut up, which is what I
Yeah.
first experienced for a long.
I'm always big about why do we do this or how do we do this? And I've actually been accused before. She asked too many whys. I'm like, but you should know why you're doing something. Like, why are we doing this? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to accomplish? But some people are like, this is just how it's always been done. This is how we do it. But there's not that cookie cutter HR thing. I mean, HR is customer service, and our customers are the employees.
Ooh, I've never heard that before, but that is amazing. Yeah, because I think it's always been very sterile, especially working in on government contracts before. There was a lot of talk of human capital, and I always hated that term because it sounds so I don't know. It sounds like I'm buying Legos or something. It doesn't feel like
Yeah,
I'm
it's
talking
powerful.
about someone who has a heart and a brain and a soul and feelings and emotions, right? Yes, Legos. I do love them. But I do think that I've seen this movement forward, at least in some organizations, not necessarily the ghosting. I don't know that I was really aware of people just not showing up and not
Yeah.
communicating
Oh
yet.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
whole other topic for
Oh yeah.
another. But I do know that when people now can feel a disconnect between their own personal values and the marketed values of an organization, if they don't align and or the organization isn't necessarily living toward what's been published, they
Yeah.
just again in a very performative way, these are our values, and I'm like, show me how you do that for your people, not just for your customer, not just to turn a profit. And I think that's potentially where this is happening and where that disconnect is coming in. With that being said, I imagine going first that there are maybe specific industries that are leaning closer in to all of you, not that they don't all need help, but Who do you find are reaching out to you most or raising their hand and saying we need help? The ones that to go first.
Nonprofits.
Yeah, that makes
Profits.
sense though.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback. I think Kim, you're right. That's our first. We don't say we have a specific industry. We actually
No.
have a specific company that has core values of pushing
Like
the status quo, not
the
being
trophy now.
satisfied. Yeah,
Mhm.
and nonprofits, because usually they can't pay top dollar, that they're mission driven. That
Mhm.
those leaders are like, how can we stand out and be different? And being different is how do you treat the people who are choosing to work for a nonprofit organization? And I'll throw government in there too,
Yeah.
because government, again, not top paying opportunity, and people are working to make the largest amount of money they can, so they sell their soul. I mean, I've been there too. So yeah, nonprofits that are trying to differentiate themselves in the workplace.
And I have like two kind of ideas in mind too. It's not necessarily like an industry specific, but like if I think about the characteristics kind of what the types of organizations that we work with, it's like usually either they need us in a pinch, like there's either an issue that they need help solving because it's really hairy and it's not going away, or in a pinch in the sense of they had planned for other things and then realize like, hey, let's bring them in too to help with this thing. So generally I feel like in a pinch is a characteristic of an organization. And then the other is those who have elevated their people practices and they're looking for a partner to help them like do the right thing over a long period of time. And and usually when those sort of situations arise, that wasn't in a pinch. It was 2, 3, 4, 5 years as like a leadership team. They've been saying, we know, we get survey feedback and we have these things and we want to do it. And so that's something that I kind of think of too, is like either in a pinch or long term, they finally got their wish to do what they wanted with their for.
Or they realized crisis management. They realized,
Mhm.
oh, we needed HR a year ago and didn't put it in place, and now we have this huge crisis, and we
Yep.
need help now. And
Mhm.
so we do crisis management too. And so, yeah,
I think it's important to note here as well that, again, we work with all types of companies, all types of industries, and let's be frank, we're not always successful in what we do.
True.
And a big common thread where we are the most successful is when you have a leader at the top who is willing to go first and willing to look inward first and say, okay, what can I change? How am I contributing to the problem here? If you have a leader that just kind of points around the room or down at other departments and says, they're the problem, they're the troublemakers, we got to fix them, it's almost like you can see it from a mile away that this is it's not going to work out in the way that they want it to, because they're not willing to look at themselves first.
and that's how we pick first. We have to get that internal champion on board. And even if they think, I'm not the problem, come in here and fix this for me. No, we know how this movie's going to end. So we make we would attack that part first. Like, okay, well, tell us what you think the pain points are. We start there. We know how to identify that very quickly. And sometimes we're wrong, sometimes it's apart. All the time we know how the movie's going to end, and we have to identify that internal champion who will lead the charge, support what we're doing with the team, and collaborate with us to make sure that efforts are successful to the benefit of their entire organization for the long term.
And oftentimes, like Paula, you were mentioning how so many companies are advertising kind of the same buzzwords that insinuate emotional intelligence and we care about you as a person. Those are and then they get in and they're like, this is not what I signed up for. A lot of times it's those leaders at the top. They know what they should be doing. They know really comprehensive, holistic, people-focused managing practices can do, yet they're still not doing it themselves.
Yeah.
And that
And
trickles
why
down
not?
to the rest of the organization.
What's holding people up from doing that? What's holding up leaders from actually being first, looking inside? What do you all think? What have you
Sometimes it's their
experienced?
pride. I mean,
Oh,
sometimes it's their pride. Sometimes, again, they, if you think about the generation thing you were talking about at the very beginning, they're so stuck in this one way that they just don't know how to evolve. They don't know how to move forward in certain areas. It's just, that's how the mechanics have worked for them for the last 50 years, and that's all they know. And they just, in this day and time, by not evolving, they just are in the wrong position.
I think they don't know what they don't know. And they
Yeah.
also, part of what they don't know is how it does trickle from the top. They're like, you guys, the managers, you guys are leading the people, you do the right thing.
Mhm.
But me at my level, I'm going to do this because this is what's always worked for me. They don't recognize that their employees are watching. Their employees and their managers are very aware of, they're setting the standard for what happens in the workplace, regardless if they want to or they say one thing and do another.
Yeah,
And
we get
nobody-
that question all the time with facilitations where they're like, oh, so I'm going to set this up for my employees to go
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
learn emotional intelligence and communication in the workplace. And we always encourage, actually, we need you to be there to model what it looks like to adopt what we're teaching and to carry that forward. But more often than not, it's almost always, and sometimes it's actually from an authentic place because they don't want to intimidate their employees. Like they want to create a safe space for their employees to learn and not feel like they're being watched by, the boss. And we just really try to help them understand too that no, it's actually, it enriches the experience if you're there, and we'll help make sure that it is a safe space. But it's eye-opening how often they think like, oh, employees are going to go do the training.
It's a missed opportunity to build that trust.
Mhm.
Yeah.
One more thing about that is a common misconception that culture is an HR function. Well, HR should follow the culture. No, culture is not an HR function. It's a leadership, organizational
Mhm.
function. So yeah, we see that a lot too. Where I hired you, go take care of that. Like
Go do the culture
Mm.
thing.
Go
Yeah.
do your
culture is
managing.
not HR function.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we could take this conversation in so many different ways. And I would love to have y'all back to have more of this, because this is what people are craving right now. And they want the hope and to be inspired that they don't have to stay where they are and they don't have to settle. I am just over the moon to be affiliated with Austin Alliance Group and get to see you really live out your mission and do it in such an authentic way. I mean, really, without that's not even being buzzy, that's being real. I think you're all amazing. So, if you'll come back again and let's have a different conversation, or a conversation about whatever's happening in the world of humans in the workforce, I would love that. But as we're
Thank you.
wrapping up, what is one little piece of information, one little maybe piece of hope that you would give someone who is listening and feeling like, I am in a workplace where that manager that you're talking about is mine and not willing to look inside of himself? How would you inspire them?
I would say,
You deserve to be able to show up in the workplace as your authentic self. Inherently, you deserve that. Yeah. That's
Love it.
my
Spend
my
more
little
time with
piece.
our work colleagues than we do our own family.
yeah.
Life's too short to be miserable.
100%.
So what's not being miserable in what we do for a living?
I'll add that in the moment or at the time, it is not ideal. It's not right. It's not painful. You deserve better. I think all of us could share stories about how we look back on times
Mhm.
like that, and that feeds our future self. And we're lucky to be like fulfilled now. And so certainly find a way through it and or out of it, but also to know that it's giving you your future self something to use and drive you in the future. And hopefully you can tuck that away as you try to navigate that situation.
Yeah,
Right.
It will be better.
all of those things I would absolutely agree to. And just to piggyback on Leah's point, all those trauma pieces that some of us have, I would hope for no one, but at the same time,
Right.
it provide those passion, if you will, to help others in some of those areas as well, and to know that they're learning some pieces of what not to do, and then hopefully move on.
And I'll add for the supervisors who are like, oh, this is so hard. Start with you and say that, hey, you all, this is really hard and I need your help. I know I've blown it a couple times, but you're really important to me. This organization's really important to me. What can I do to make it better? And then shut up,
And
sit on
listen.
your hands and listen. Really, really listen. And you'll be better for it.
Vulnerability-based trust, we've said it a couple of times, we said the word, that's our next topic, because I think all of us could go
Yeah.
on and on and how we
Yes.
show up in the workforce too on that. So
Yeah. And what does that look like when you say, like, what? So to tell stories around, okay, we all said it's about trust. Well, I don't even trust, so-and-so. Why would I trust my coworker? So
I think I hear the to be continued.
Yeah. Good one, Kim. Good one,
Tina,
Kim.
I don't think you shared. And I want to make sure we get your nugget of wisdom.
Oh, well, I mean, there's so many times I wanted to say empathy, empathy. I mean,
Yes.
we've walked into a lot of situations. I mean, there's times we've had clients come to us, companies come to us, so we go in and then I'm on the phone with Kim going, hey, this isn't exactly what we thought it was. This is something else. Like, and it's quick for us to be able to identify that, but it's about letting managers know it's to have empathy. It's okay to be
Yeah.
vulnerable. It's okay to not be so structured in the old ways.
Let your guard down is what I'm
Let your
hearing.
guard down. Yeah. I mean,
Love it.
again, we want for you what you want for you. Like, what do you really want? What do you want for your
Could we
company?
end it any better? That's how they start all their trainings, y'all.
Yeah.
We want for you what you want for you. And now
What do you want?
they're asking you, what do you want for yourself? The end. Mic drop. Okay. Well, y'all are amazing. You know how much I love you. I've said it about 1,000 times. Here, I'll say it 1,000 times more probably this afternoon. Please go check out Austin Alliance Group at austinalliancegroup.com. You can follow them on social media, give them a search. You will want to connect with them on LinkedIn individually as well. I will give you all the details to be able to do that in the show notes. And until next time, just be good to yourselves. And we'll see you on the next episode of Voices on the Verge.
Bye.
Thank you.